inadequate and that really are scary in some ways. And it isn't something that you can foretell. If anything, that whole process is unpredictable. So I went to a small Catholic high school in Detroit, and I wouldn't say I was a very good student, but the way they taught writing was a system by which you got 100 points to start, and if you read a book and you wanted to write an essay about it, they would then chip away points. Like if you missed a period, you lost 5 points. If you missed a comma, you lost 2 points. If you gave an erroneous fact, you lost 5 points again. And nobody was staying at 100, and that kind of approach to writing took away the whole story. It became sort of like looking at some kind of a map. And I said, nah, I don't think so. And then I went to college, and in college, I found out that most of the people who were teaching the big courses for the people who had to take a certain kind of literature course because my major was in history were teaching assistants. There were like 60 to 80 people in the classroom, and we had to read something like a book every 2 weeks. And that again took away the pleasure. It just was finishing. I wasn't feeling motivated about it. And then I kind of began to have something that didn't seem that special, but was special. And that was, I started writing letters. Because my friends were going into service, I had friends who were going away to college, I had friends who were leaving Detroit, and I started corresponding. And I really enjoyed that kind of writing, and I really enjoyed reading the letters from my friends. And one person stood out. His name was Jerry Rosansky, and he was the class wit. He was the person who nobody took on because he was that sharp. And I started writing to him. He was stationed in Alaska, and he was the kind of person that somebody would make a terrible comment or something that was just inappropriate. My tendency might be to say something like, God, why do you say something so stupid? And he might say something like, well, I bet you're glad you got that out of your system. You know, that is a world of difference. And he had that talent. And so when he came back from Alaska, we went out for a drink together, and we're sitting at a bar, and he looks over at me and he says, you know something, I really enjoyed your letters, Ray. They were written in such a way I could actually see the scene, see the person, hear the voice. I really thought they were great, thanks. Now I'm the stoic. And I just said, thank you, Jerry, and looked straight ahead. But that was the first time I received any positive feedback about writing that was specific and that I could kind of understand. In college it was like, great job, B+. And then I had an experience that in many ways changed my life, but at that point, it gave me a different insight into what I was doing. And I took a course with a fellow by the name of Finley Hooper. And Finley Hooper was legendary at Wayne State University. He had a way of describing, he was an ancient historian. And sometimes when I would listen to him, along with like 180 other people would be sitting in the window wells, people would be sitting all the way up on the floor. Only about 60 of us were students. And he had a way of describing these scenes with Caesar and Cleopatra and all the rest. And I closed my eyes and I would see like a mosaic of different scenes passing along a temple wall. He was that good. And I took 3 courses with him. And the third course, the last test, the last question, an essay question, and when he returned it, he had written below that, it is an answer like this with nuance and insight that makes me cherish being a teacher. Thank you, Mr. Wlodkowski. And that just set me on a different path. And after that, I became a psychologist, and I was working in Milwaukee, And I was teaching some courses at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and my friend, who was in the English department, he runs into my office, he opens the door, and he says, "You got to do this. In about 6 months, Paul Schrader is going to offer a seminar on screenwriting right here. There's only going to be about 14 to 16 people admitted, and it's going to go quickly, and you better just get over there and put your name in." So I did, and 6 months later, I am taking a seminar with Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, and just won an Academy Award a couple of years ago for First Reformed. And I come into this class, and I take a seat, and I look to my right, and there's Art Garfunkel. Big hair. And I hate to say this, but I'm starstruck. I'm thinking Sounds of Silence, Cecilia, Homeward Bound, I just get all the titles. And I must have looked terrible because we didn't have a conversation, and we never became friendly, and that was kind of the end of it. But the course itself, the seminar, we would look at films, and he would talk about different points of conflict and so forth, different plot points, and then in the afternoon we would write. And we did that for 2 straight weeks, and then the big event was meeting for a half an hour with Paul Schrader, who would look at your first draft of your first screenplay. So that Friday comes, and I walk into that room. He's a stocky guy, kind of a raspy voice, but very insightful, of course, very sensitive. And he says to me, "Ray, I think you've got something here. I have some recommendations for you, but I think you should finish this, find an agent, and see if you can get it into a film." And I was blown away. I was like, wow. And he says a couple of suggestions. You need to use flashbacks. It's about a boy who is late mature, which I was, of course, and he matures in his senior year, and he goes to from 120 to 180 pounds, puts on all this muscle and everything, but his senior year is ending, and he wants another senior year. So he takes his savings, he doesn't tell his parents, he buys a motorcycle, and he goes to California, and he has another chance, another senior year. That's the plot. And I found an agent within 6 months after I revised it, and for a year, I kept getting all of these different evaluations back from different producers, mostly in California. And there were 27 rejections, and then my agent started to lose his interest. And I'm a psychologist. I had to get back to the work I was doing. And luckily, I was working in an area which allowed me to read people like Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud, Jung. So I was reading good, really well-written pieces of material and insights and theories and so forth, but that just wasn't quite enough. So I eventually moved to Seattle, and when I got to Seattle, I went to the Elliott Bay Book Club, which is a wonderful bookstore in Seattle, and I looked at the bulletin board and I see a little sort of like a business card in the corner, and it says, "Writers looking for another writer. If you're serious about writing, call this number." So I called it, and I was interviewed by the person who put up the telephone number. Then there was a conference call. Then there was submitting some work I had written, and then I became part of a group of writers. And there were some really wonderful writers in that group. And one person was a specialist in Chinese literature. Another person was an actor. Another person was a business accountant. And another person was a teacher. And that was my first writing group. and we were like a wellness group. We cheered each other on, we kept doing different drafts. We really began to try to help each other to get our work out there. And I'm still friends with at least 2 of those individuals and have contact with them on a regular basis. Just a wonderful group. And one of the things I didn't understand until almost a month ago, and this is not the point of the story, but I just don't want to miss it. When a person is younger and you have a kind of conditioning around what a writer is, and you're in a high school like I was, where we're reading classic books by Hemingway and Steinbeck and Bronte and various writers, it's a form of associative conditioning that you then think writer and you think master classic writers. And if you have that image, it distances the ability to reach it and makes it much further out. And I think that happened to me through nobody's willful intent, but it just happened. And unless I hadn't had that talk with my writing group right now, I wouldn't understand that. So now I write a book called Motor City Boys, which is about a group of 16-year-olds in Detroit in their junior year. And again, I get an agent, a New York agent, and she takes it over for about 2 years, and it just doesn't go anywhere. So I have to go through a process to get it back, and then finally I get it back, and I self-publish it. But it's kind of like being a klutzy dancer who is a person who learns to dance well, but inside still feels like a klutz. And that feeling didn't really leave that easily. And then I came to Chicago. We came to Chicago, and again in a bookstore I see this what I call a advertisement, and it says being a writer, become a memoirist, memoir in a year. And it was at Story Studio, and I took it, and as a result, I wrote a memoir. And that, I was able to send out to about 7 publishers, and after that, it was published. And I can remember the letter. The letter was from a publisher called Brill Sense, which has offices in Boston and in Holland. And the first line was, "We would be delighted to publish your book. Please see the enclosed letter of agreement and let us know as soon as possible so we can work on this together." And when I read that, I was 70 years old. And I just thought, wow. So what I have learned from that, and this is the point of this story, is that perseverance isn't a slog. It's a way of finding out about yourself. It's a way of making friends. It's a way of reading a lot of great literature along with professional work. It's a way of trying to answer a question on a regular basis, like, what can I write about and what's really important to write about? And that changes over the years. And now it's to realize, for me, that life is finite, that there's vast ineptitude in the human condition, but there's also heart, and to be brave. Thank you very much.